Okay, so I'm excited about today's episode. I have on Holly Kohlmann. She's a child passenger safety technician and a baby wearing expert and a fellow doula. So I'm really excited to dive into all of this with her today. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So first of all, like I saw, you are a full spectrum doula, and I'd love for you just to kind of touch on that and explain to our listeners what you do with that part of your career.
So I started as a baby educator and then became a Carseat tech and then a postpartum doula. It just kind of all flowed together, seemed to go really well. And about a month ago, I got my birth certification so that I could start volunteering at my local hospital as a birth and postpartum doula. So what I do is I provide support during birth, the emotional support, making sure that the birthing person's wishes are respected, that they have time to discuss things with their partner. If they need anything, I can provide support mentally, physically, however that looks. And then as a postpartum doula, I get to go into homes after they come home from the hospital or birthing center, or if they have a home birth, and provide emotional and physical support for them, help them settle into their home, make sure mom's being supported and the partners are being supported, and also that baby's getting their needs fulfilled too. So that involves a little bit of lactation, a little bit of baby wearing, a little bit of just general therapy for parents to talk out their birth experiences if they need to. And it's a really rewarding thing to be welcomed into someone's home and be able to provide that support.
That's so amazing. Yeah, postpartum care is very lacking in our country, but so needed. And postpartum doulas are absolutely amazing. Having that added bonus, I think, isn't, but I feel like people don't really recognize how needed it is and how beneficial it could be. Like just to
You don't.
have somebody extra to be like, here, you hold the baby. I'm going to nap. If they need a nurse, come let me know.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what it is. It's just sitting with them and being an emotional support. That's a third party. I'm neutral. I'm there to, talk out issues between trying to figure out schedules, or if one partner has to go back to work and the other partner is feeling completely abandoned, they have someone there to lean on, even if it's washing bottles or making a quick meal for them or making sure that they're staying hydrated, which is one of the most important things postpartum, especially if you're breastfeeding or chest feeding, is to make sure that you are getting enough fluids in. And
Mhm.
as caregivers and parents, we forget to do that. I mean, I have a 7-year-old and I'm constantly like, oh, I should sit down and eat something and have a glass of water. I'm absolutely terrible about that myself. And I give this great advice. And then I just am like, I should follow that too.
I know. I've never in my life understood people who are like, oh my gosh, I forgot to eat today. I'm like, what? Like my life revolves around like what I'm going to eat next, my meals till I had two kids. And I'm
Hmm.
like, it it's lunchtime. I haven't eaten. No
Yeah.
wonder I'm crabby. I'm completely depleted. Like I am like, oh my gosh, I was telling my sister earlier, I'm like, I know that my body is craving more nutritional support right now. Like
Yeah.
I need to eat nutrient dense, good food. I need to wake up and eat. I'm like, I've been up for 4 hours and I haven't eaten today. Like, this is not okay. Like, I need to wake up and feed myself. And it
Yeah.
is like nice having a reminder of like, hey, go feed yourself
Yeah.
or let me
Get
feed
yourself
you.
food. Let me bring you something. Here's your water. I know you don't want it. Take a sip anyway. Like that's a big one for me. I'm always like, here's your cup, take a sip. But I don't
Mhm.
want it. You don't have a choice. You have to take a sip, or I'm going to stand here for the next 10 minutes and hold your cup out at you until you drink it.
You do it. I know. Or the worst is like when you sit down to nurse and your water bottle's in the other room
I
or
have
something.
that
And you're
the
like,
first month when I come over. I'm like, set up a station. Like one of the very first things I do when I come in, and I'm like, water at every station, wherever you're going to feed baby, wherever you're sitting, you have water and a basket, a bag, a box of snacks, whatever that looks like. Just things that you can easily grab while you're nursing, and like an activity. If it's your phone, leave your iPad somewhere else, or computer, like, so you have something to do, because honestly, you are stuck there for at least an hour with a newborn trying to nurse, and everyone is just like, this is my life now. I'm stuck here
right.
forever and I'm really bored. So I always recommend like making a little space for yourself at each space that you feed to make sure you have the materials you need. If it's water or like a hydrating drink, coconut water, juice, whatever that looks like for you, couple snacks, and I try and keep them replenished so that they always have something to grab. Because of course, when you're sitting there nursing, you're thinking about all the things that you should do or need to do or want, and then you can't go get them because you're under a baby.
Right. Yeah. You're nuzzled into that nook.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's so true. So I would love to dive into baby wearing. It's something that I didn't really do much with my first, and I do a lot more with my second now. More out of necessity. So it was
Yes,
like, okay, if we're going grocery shopping, if we're doing anything, my oldest is in the front of the cart and I'm wearing the youngest.
that's
So I wear her
super common.
places. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I'm like, how else? I don't know any other way to try to figure this
There's
out. Yeah.
really not, because you can't manage a toddler and a stroller and have a newborn and have hands free. Like it's just not feasible. And a lot of clients that I work with are usually second time parents going, I have a 2 or 3-year-old that I'm chasing, and I can't just be bopping my baby around as I'm chasing my other little ones. So it's very common to hear that second time parents or even third time parents are like, I just can't manage. So
hmm Yeah. So I'd love
baby
to talk about
great.
like, yeah, I mean, it comes into handy so much. Like, what would be maybe some of the benefits of baby wearing?
There are 10. The first being just the skin to skin and close contact with your baby. They're on your chest, they're near you, they're hearing your voice constantly. It's very soothing for both of you. It mean also hands free. So you can still have that snuggle time, but you're not stuck sitting on the couch or in a chair or having them in a car seat. Baby wearing works like tummy time too. It's awesome. So when you're walking in your core moves, baby's moving with your body when they're facing in against you. And so they're getting that stimulation in their brain to move their bodies, to keep their balance, to work on that proprioception. And so that's like they're using you as the floor or the table. They're pushing off against you and they're able to strengthen their muscles. They're being supported by their body and a little bit on their necks and head. When you put them in a carrier, a lot of them have pillows for newborns and then you flip it out. So they're having to work on that neck and head control if they want to look out and see around. And the plus is they're also getting that stimulation, that sound and visual stimulation. So they're encouraged to look up and look around and check out what's going on around them. And then I've also seen for a lot of kids that I know now that were born when they were smaller, the vocabulary is extensive, the way that they can communicate with people, because they're not being talked down to in a stroller, they're being talked around in a conversation. So like you could be talking with another adult or your partner, baby's there, and they're just taking it all in. They're not hearing that baby talk. They're not hearing that like less grammatically correct. I mean, all parents do it. They like kind of
hmm
talk cute to their baby, the cute baby talk, but they're also hearing actual conversations. And so their brains are taking it in and they're already getting exposed to speech. And that's, I think, a huge benefit for a lot of kids too.
I just learned about the tummy time thing this year. I had no idea that it counted as tummy time. And I
Yes.
wish I would have known that with my first because I wasn't that great with doing it with her. I mean, she was never like behind on anything. But also I just didn't like know everything. And then with my second, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like she, we did some tummy time on the floor. And then I'm like, when I'm wearing her, I'm like, oh, this counts. This is so
It
nice.
does. They're upright, they're being supported, but they're also having to engage their core and stay upright because they can't really slouch and fall into it. Like it's even if you're wrapping, if you're using a buckle or a structured carrier, like they need to be upright and engaged with you. But the plus is like your body's moving with their body. So it's like as you're walking, they're kind of moving with you. So they're feeling that their hips are slightly moving and being pushed in and out, and their core's being worked. And so you get this plus of building those muscles that they have much sooner than you would when like pediatricians recommend tummy time. Or if your baby hates it and hates tummy time on the floor, it's a really great alternative because then you don't have a screaming child
Right.
super
Right.
angry being
hmm
stuck on the floor.
It was super interesting what you said about the vocabulary too, which I wasn't aware of. But that makes sense because even now, my big thing with my 6-month-old is I like when she's on the floor, I'm like, mama,
Mhm.
mama, like trying to get her to start saying like just like
Yeah. And they
single
need to
syllable
see
nouns.
that. So like
Right.
engaging with them face to face is good, but it's also they're hearing like tones and conversations and they can also absorb that. So you sometimes see that they're a little quicker to talk or they talk more clearly because they're literally they're just there. And so you don't think about it, you're talking around them. So they're taking a
Hmm.
lot of that in too.
Yeah. So as far as like technique goes with baby wearing, is there, because I mean now just even I feel like from when my 2-year-old was a baby, there's like so many options. There's tons of different like companies and everybody has their favorite. Um, I mean, is there like a right way to do it, a wrong way to do it? Is there like certain brands or styles, I guess, that are better than others? How does all of that work?
So yes, there's a wrong way to baby wear, but it's more about safety and keeping airways clear, as with anything, with car seats, with baby wearing, with sleepers, with any situation where you're putting baby in a potentially compromising position to block their airways, there's a wrong way to do it. In regards to carriers, different styles, different companies, different brands, and materials even, it's all about finding what works for you. So we always say finding a baby carrier is like finding the perfect pair of jeans. What fits my body doesn't necessarily fit your body, doesn't fit your partner's body, doesn't fit someone else's body. So I love friends who always are like, here's a carrier that I can give you. Here's my ring sling. I loved it. It was great. And then I go to help them with it. And they're like, I can't get this. And I'm like, because this may not be the carrier that fits your needs. And it was really kind that your friend offered this or said, this is the brand I use and it worked for me. But it's not always a guarantee that it's actually going to work. And so I'm a big proponent for hiring, like finding baby wearing educators and reaching out with questions or going to local baby wearing meetups. There's handful all over the country that offer free or discounted baby wearing education. I personally do. I'm in Orange County, California, so I've been active and got active with Baby Wearing OC, which is our local group, and Baby Wearing LA. So we used to host free meetings. COVID happened. We're trying to get back on track, but it's a free option to come out and try a ton of carriers, which is always really nice, and see if there's something that fits your needs. And we try and have a big selection of different options. But if it were a situation where you can't, I would say go to a local store. Target's wonderful in that they have a lot of their demo carriers out. You can touch them, you can feel them. Nordstrom, if you're local to that, is also a good option. They have demo carriers. And sometimes you'll see they're made out of different materials. So it's also about what feels comfortable on your skin to your body. So there's cotton and there's some that are sporty and they have mesh, like nylon mesh. I know Ergo makes one that's vented with a nylon mesh. And for me personally, I find it kind of scratchy. I don't like it. I prefer a full cotton carrier, but someone else who lives in a really hot climate year round that may need that vented option or who runs hot may find that that's more comfortable for them, or if they're outdoorsy and want to do activities, that may be a better fit. Some may find that a buckle carrier is too bulky for them. And by buckle carrier, I mean like an Ergo Baby or a Becco or any of those brands that have buckles on them that you would snap on your body. We usually refer to those as buckle carriers or soft structured carriers because they're literally shaped to the body and you just put the shoulder straps on, you clip it on and you're good to go. People may find that those aren't as comfortable for them. They feel really bulky and just heavy and awkward. So a ring sling might be a good option. And that's one where it's a single piece of fabric with rings that you pull through, or stretchy for a newborn might be good. And that's one where like a Mobi or Catan comes into play when they're really new and really small and you just want something soft against your body, their body. You're working through postpartum weight loss and weight gain and breast changes. And so being able to wrap something that every day fits a little differently is sometimes nice. As baby gets bigger, you can adjust where everything hits and fits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
that's a lot of good information. Because they're not necessarily cheap. So in order
no,
to like buy something and then it's not working out the way that you want, it could be extremely frustrating. And I feel like a lot of people would just then give up on baby wearing.
they do. That happens quite a bit. And so it's nice if you find an educator, if you're still pregnant and can find someone that can come into your home, or you find a meeting to go to, you can get your hands on all these different types of carriers and see what the options are and then make a decision. And I do recommend, if you find something you love or you've tried something and you really like it, check used markets. There's
Mm-hmm.
Facebook Marketplace is a great option. I know that there's baby wearing groups that offer buy sell trade pages through Facebook. With the Kavit, you always check everything over, make sure no buckles are broken, ask questions, look for any damage, holes, rips, tears, anything like that.
There's in the Chicago area where I am, and I'm not going to remember the name of it, but out in the burbs somewhere, once a year, there's this huge thrift market of all baby stuff. So you can find strollers, you can find cloth diapers, you can find toys, you can find bassinets, cribs, whatever. And I actually got a wrap there that I really, really liked. And I found with the newborn phase, I liked the Moby style. I think mine was called
Yeah.
a boba.
The boba wrap's another brand.
Yeah.
Boba's a great one for stretchies.
Yeah, I love that in the infant phase
Yeah.
because like you said, it's just like it feels so
Cozy.
snug. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
snug. And now if I'm running in and out of stores, I actually like the buckle kinds because there's like a little pouch. I just throw my keys and my wallet in there and it's like quick. She's 6 months um
She's wanting
and
to look around and see more,
oh
and
yeah.
she has the opportunity to do that she wouldn't have in the stretchy. Also, babies get heavy, and when you put
Oh
them in the
gosh.
stretchy carriers, they start to sink down, and you're like, okay. So then you bring in the soft structured and you transition,
Hmm.
and like you from there you can go to the ergo, which is still about 2 years, and then they make toddler carriers and they make preschool size, and you could keep wearing for an extended period. I know there are a handful of brands too that have now introduced child sizes. It's geared towards those with special needs or low mobility or low tone. They're able to still transport their children, not necessarily in a stroller or a wheelchair, which is a really nice opportunity for parents to still carry their children places
Hmm.
where other devices might be limited for how well they can move.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I've wondered if I could put my 2-year-old like on my back a certain
Totally
way.
can. Yep,
Yeah.
you definitely can, and I recommend it if they're a runner or you're going out and you're just like, I just need you up. I need you contained. I need you up. You can. I think I wore my daughter until she was 5.
Oh
So I have
wow.
like pre-K size carriers that I would put her up in when we traveled and we wouldn't take a stroller. We would just, my husband and I would alternate baby wearing, and we would
Hmm.
pop her up on our back. And I mean, COVID hit shortly after, so that kind of petered out, unfortunately. But I was, and she's big, and I would still wear her, and it made it easier to travel, to do things. When her legs got tired, I could just know that I could pop her up, and we could keep going.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I feel like it's a lot of good information because I didn't even know at first with my boba that it doesn't stay like you can get it pretty snug, but as they get heavier, it does kind of start to droop a little bit. So then I
Yeah,
thought like, I'm like, am I doing it wrong now that she's
well,
growing?
they get bigger, and the carriers are made to stretch, especially the small ones. So they're very forgiving when you're learning, which is nice. But as baby gets bigger, they start to sink down. And
Hmm.
then it's usually a good sign that it's time to transition to something a little sturdier, either a woven wrap. If you like the wrapping, you could go to a woven wrap and learn to put them on that way, or a buckled carrier, a soft structured carrier like Ergo or Moby. Becco, Kinder Pack's one of my personal favorites because they're very accommodating for regular and plus size wearers. And I'm a plus size wearer. I struggle to find carriers that fit around my waist, around my shoulders, around my bust. And so it's nice to know that there are smaller brands out there that do kind of cater to those that are either on the very petite size or the larger size.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that is good to know too. Um, yeah, I got a Ergo that I had registered for, and that's the one that I just keep in my car for running in and out of stores and running errands. And
They're great for
um,
that.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, it's just the only thing I don't like is when my husband uses it and then I have to like readjust
yeah.
it. I'm like, wait, I
And
had it
sometimes
just perfect.
And sometimes if that's the case and like you find a carrier really like and your partner likes it, I'm like, just get two. Cause then you can have one at home, one in the car, you can each switch off. Or I'll see like certain brands fit men better or larger full shoulder people better. Like sometimes ergos fit smaller, more petite people. Those with sloped shoulders find it's more comfortable. And so I'll be like, maybe this carrier would be better, like this brand and this carrier would be better for you, and this one would be better for your partner. And then you each have your own and you're not fighting over them.
Yeah,
We're
that's
having
true.
to
That's
like
true.
complain about adjusting.
He does complain about the arms on the Ergo, like it's not
They hit
comfortable.
really high. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
always have to like try to readjust and he's like, yeah, whatever. Like he just gets over
Yeah.
it and he's like, let's
They're
go.
just, they're slightly smaller arm loops. I have the same problem. I like ergos. I like certain ones, but for me personally, they wouldn't be the first one that I would gravitate towards I'm also an educator and have like 50 carriers. So I've got options,
Right, right.
but I like when people are able to try them on because everyone fits in the carrier differently and baby fits differently depending on
Mhm.
what you're doing too.
So I feel like most people would already know that this like isn't necessarily true, but I'd love to for you to just kind of speak to it because there is maybe with some older generations or maybe even some in our generation that are worried about if you're wearing the baby all the time, then they're just going to want you to hold them all the time. They're going to get spoiled. It's like, okay, but your baby needs to
They
get
need
down,
they
you
need
know.
to be held. They are born and come out and are not self-sufficient in any way. They are expected to be held. They're expected to be comforted that they've been inside of you for 9 months and then all of a sudden they're out in the world and it's loud and it's bright and it's scary and you're their comfort place. So there's nothing wrong with wearing them. They're not going to be spoiled. It's not going to ruin them. In all honesty, like I have one of the most independent kids I've ever met. And same with friends that have born their babies because she knows that her needs were met when she was small. And now she knows that I'm a safe space she can still come to and snuggle with. And she doesn't feel like it's a burden at any point to be close to me or, come in and just lay on my chest or curl up in my lap because it's a safe space for her.
Mhm.
And I mean, I have friends who are sleep educators and they're like, it's fine to wear your baby during the day for them to nap. If that's the way they're going to nap, that's the way they're going to nap. If you're out doing stuff and you got to run errands, baby's going to sleep, let him sleep. I mean, if you're doing it at night when you're sleeping, obviously that's not safe and you'll want to put them in a safe sleeping space. But during the day, if it's how you get things done and it's what it takes, that's what it takes. It's
Mhm.
also great for those babies that have reflux or just need to be upright for a little longer after feeding. It means that you're not sitting there for half an hour waiting for everything to settle in their stomachs and move down their esophagus. You can keep them upright and still be able to move around and do things. So you're not stuck.
Mhm. Yeah. And I feel like research is also like just coming out more and more, just showing how kids learn how to regulate is us
Mhm.
co-regulating with them. So
Definitely.
when they're close to us and feeling us, that we're helping them learn how to co-regulate
It is.
themselves.
On the opposite side, like if you're anxious and frustrated and upset trying to figure out a carrier and you're trying to put baby in, they're feeling the same thing and they're going to get anxious and upset and wound up. So I always recommend, like, if this is new, put them on you, let the carrier hang, take a few minutes to calm yourselves down, get everybody regulated, and then work on putting the carrier on or in those stretchies for that situation. Like you can tuck them in halfway, support their bum and legs, and just hold their back and take a minute to just breathe. And I always encourage parents when they first start, like, just set everything aside, hold your baby and take a breath. And it's going to calm you down and then it's going to calm them down in turn. And it'll make happier wearers for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's such good advice. So I'd love to talk about your child passenger safety technician side. Uh, like what exactly does that mean and what do you do with that?
So I, about 6 years ago, found that the only options to get my car seat checked were a police station or a fire department. And it's impossible to get appointments, and there's no
Yeah.
guarantee that they're always doing it right. Like I have seen car seats that have been installed by CHP, and I'm like, that doesn't look right. That's not correct. Because it's not their main focus. It's not their main job. They're there because they have to do it or because they volunteered and don't necessarily keep up on it. And I saw that there was a need in my community for car seat education. So it's a 4-day class. It's very involved. We learn all about all the different types of car seats, how to put babies in safely, how to put toddlers in safely, how buses work when you put your kiddo on a bus, and all the science behind it. And I realized that, like, I really liked it. Like it was just fun information. And so I kind of ran with it. I now offer private installation classes where I would go to a person's home and say, this is how we put your base of your car seat. And if you're using an infant bucket seat, this is what the car seat needs to look like. This is how it's level. Put baby in it, or a demo. I usually take a demo doll if they're expecting, and we talk about how to make sure that the buckles are in the correct place and the crotch strap is correctly placed. The seatbelt's not too tight. The chest clips where it needs to be. For bigger kids, it's a lot of, as they grow, we'll do seat checks, and I'll come in and make sure that, the straps are where they need to be, baby's fitting correctly, and they haven't outgrown their seat. Or for some seats, the ones on the market now, some of them are so fancy and advanced that parents call me and they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea how to put this in. And with being a CPST, I get the benefit of continuing education. Car seat brands come in and say, this is what we're releasing. This is how it works. This is the install you're looking for. And so I can then take that to parents and say, this is what I learned from this webinar. Let me show you what needs to be done. And let's talk through how you would put this in.
Yeah, that's such good information. I called our fire station and they don't offer them where I live. I called and I'm like, hey, can you guys, and they're like, yeah, we don't do that. And I'm like, they're like, you can call the police station. I was like, oh my goodness, this is like, and it wasn't possible. So I ended up just like having a friend who had the same car seat, like help me. And then of course, YouTubing and Googling and reading, and then being like, I hope my kid's safe.
Yeah. And it's exhausting. I mean, before I did the class, I had my daughter's seat in the wrong spot in my car, completely installed incorrectly. And I had no idea. And I thought I was doing it right. And so as soon as I finished the class, I immediately like fixed her car seat and realized, like, if I'm doing it wrong, how many other parents are? And how
Like,
long?
what do you mean the wrong spot in your car? Like,
So like for some cars, I had a 5-seat SUV, and the middle seat is not an option to put a car seat in. And I didn't know that until after I did the class and I checked my vehicle manual, and I had to move her seat because it literally was in an unsafe position had anything happened. Thankfully, I was never in an accident. Nothing ever happened, but you don't know until someone either points it out or you get kind of the oh crap moment of, oh, that was really, really wrong.
Right. I know. My husband's like thinks of like worst case scenario for everything, which can be like good and bad. But I remember when we installed my oldest daughter's, we just had like a normal size sedan, and we put it on the passenger side in the back.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense. So if I need to like kind of turn around or whatever, I can see her. But then we ended up switching it to the driver's side in the back. And I don't know if that's right or wrong.
It really doesn't matter.
Okay, because his logic was, if you're driving and somebody's going to hit you, you're more likely to swerve to like protect yourself, like your side.
Yes.
And he's like, the baby's only going to be on that side. So then that makes sense. And I'm like, okay, yeah, let's switch it.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, with the advances that have been made with those types of seats, I always tell people, like, baby's in a tiny little cocoon. So no matter where you put them, they're going to be safe. Those shells come up from the side. They're very hard. That base is locked in. They're not going anywhere. And they're literally in like a little like cocoony bubble. They're padded. A lot of them have side impact protection built into the seats now. So that's that extra like layer on the outside of molded plastic that comes around that the seat wraps around. Some of them have pieces that pop out intentionally. So if you were hit from the side, those pieces will block the door. I mean, they're so safe now, which is great, because 20 years ago, I mean, we were riding in the back of trucks, holding on for dear life. Like it was no big deal. And I look at it and go, one, how did I survive? And two, my child will never do that because I know how unsafe it is.
Yeah, I mean, in the back of trucks for sure, but also just like the front seat of them.
Oh yeah. At like 7, I remember sitting in the front seat, and now I'm like, your child needs to be 13. They are not big enough. They are going to break their face in front of it in an airbag.
Yeah. I know we do like joke and talk about like how crazy it is that like your 11-year-old's in a booster seat, but at the same time, it's like
really important.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. We're like, that's like nuts, but
yeah,
I mean, I'm going to do it for my kids. So.
I mean, I see the photos, I see the reports, I see the people who come out and speak and we're like, I was in an accident and I wasn't in a booster and I can't walk, or like, I mean, deaths from with boosters as opposed to without. So the rates are staggering in the difference between the two. I just did recently a big kid booster seminar that I sat in on, and it was showing the statistics of kids the same age of those who survived a major crash in and out of a booster, and the difference, it was just exponential, because parents forget. They're like, oh, my kid looks big enough, they're fine, and all their friends are not riding in it, and so it's not a big deal. And it's like, no, but it is. Like the risks that they're put at and the things that can happen. Those seatbelts are made for an adult in a crash, just like airbags. And cars have gotten more advanced and much more safe, but the safety systems are much more aggressive. So those airbags come flying out at you and they can hurt an adult, they can break bones. So imagine putting your 8-year-old there.
Right. Mhm. Yeah. Well, and so you see a lot too, people turning their kid around too soon.
Yes.
Um, my husband and I were also just having that conversation. He's like, "So when does Joey turn around?" And I was like, "Never."
I
Which
always recommend, I'm happy to see that more states are adding state minimum of the age of 2. So
mhm,
like there is a minimum age before they can be turned around, and I'm grateful for that. But I always recommend until they've maxed out the height or weight limit of their seat, keep them rear facing as long as you possibly can.
mhm. I
And
know
that
one question some people say though is like, even if their legs are bent up a little bit, does that
they're
mean
fine.
that they're going to like break their legs if you're in an
No,
accident?
it's much less likely that they will break their legs rear facing than front facing, because front facing in an impact, if their legs are hanging, like if their legs are like this and the driver's seat comes back, it's going to hit and it's going to snap their legs the way that they're sitting. Whereas rear facing, if they're sitting like this and their feet are up in an impact, they're just going to be pushed against the back of a soft seat. They're not going to go anywhere. They can have their legs up straight, but the way that they're buckled in and secured, their legs are just maybe going to bump their face. Or if they're sitting crisscross, their legs are just going to push against the back of a seat. It's not going to do any harm. It's much more likely that they will break bones front facing at a younger age.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And then what about travel? Because I know like a few times you had mentioned with the infant seat, when
Mhm.
they're in their bases, like they're so secure, but so many of those infant seats don't necessarily require bases.
Yes.
And so how I know ours doesn't require a base, but we have it installed. It's in
Yeah.
there. There's one in both of our vehicles, but as far as like travel goes, like a lot of those it's like, okay, well, you don't need the base to travel. You can just bring the car seat,
Mhm.
strap it into the car when you're traveling, and that's fine. What
I always try and teach both,
Okay.
especially if I see that they have a car seat that can be used baseless. I always try and make sure I'm like, in the situation where you're taking an Uber or you're going with a family member or a friend and you're getting picked up, here's how you put your infant bucket seat in without the base. And it's very similar to it's a seatbelt install, but it would be very similar if you installed the base instead of with the latch pieces, so the pieces that buckle directly into your car with the two little U bars that you can feel in the seat. You use your seatbelt instead. All cars today are made with switchable retractors. So it's like if you slammed on your brakes and you stopped really fast and the seatbelt caught you, it automatically is made to stop and not let it reel out anymore. But you can switch it. So if you've ever like pulled your seatbelt out all the way or had someone pull it out and then you let it go and it doesn't let any more slack out, it's a switchable. So that means that it'll automatically lock into place instead of just at an emergency if you stop too hard. And that's how you would install it. So it would go around, buckle across, buckle in, and then you would just proceed to tighten it as you would if you were buckling in the base with a seatbelt too. It's just
Mhm,
as safe, just as secure. The one thing you do need to check for though is to make sure it's level. So there's usually a line on the seat
mhm,
itself or some kind of bubble or some kind of marking that you want to make sure the seat's level, and that's to make sure baby's airways are clear. When you put the base in the car, it automatically levels once you've set it. So it keeps baby in the correct recline position. Whereas if you're just putting the bucket in, you don't have anything to catch to make sure that it is level.
mhm.
And so
Yeah.
you have to visually do that.
Mhm. Um, one other question about this. What about plane safety?
So a lot of parents do not know that the minimum weight for a plane seat is 40 pounds. You have to have a child weighing at least 40 pounds to be in a seat. And a lot of flights are like under 2, they don't need a seat. However, they obviously do need to buy a seat. Always recommend, if you can afford it and you're traveling, get them a seat. Get them a seat, take your car seat on, do not check it, because I'm sure you've seen luggage being handled and it gets thrown around, it comes out all beat up. That's the same thing happening in your car seat. You can put it in
Mhm,
a bag, you can try and keep it safe, but there's no guarantee it's not going to show up looking like it's been dragged through the woods and beaten with a stick multiple times. Just because they're in a rush, they're trying to get the plane loaded, they're throwing everything in. I've heard a lot of people who have landed from going from one location to another, or especially with connecting flights where they're trying to get luggage on, they get their car seat and it's not usable because it looks like it's been in an accident and they have to go out, leave the kids at the airport, go get another car seat and come back.
Wow. Yeah. I didn't know the 40 pounds thing. So
Mhm.
although like they're over 2, so like my daughter's turning 2 this week. Um, I don't think she's 40 pounds.
Most aren't. There's
Yeah, I'm like,
very few that
I
are.
don't think so.
And the
But
plus about taking your car seat on the plane, it's a safe space that they know. So it's not something new and novel where they want to play with the seatbelt and they want to push all the buttons and they want to do all the things in the seat and they're up and down and they realize they can get out. You put their car seat in, you buckle it in. If they're rear facing, you would just slot it through the rear facing path, tighten it like you normally would in the car if you were using a seatbelt, and then buckle them in. And they're in it, and they know, just like in a car, they need to stay in their car seat to stay safe. So it's kind of a comforting thing for them to know, with all these new experiences going on around them and being in a plane, that they have their car seat, they know it, it's their space, they can hang out in it. It's also an option just for the plane. You could say just for plane rides, we're going to switch you around to the front because it's less about impact front to back with a plane, more so than turbulence. Like if they were bounced up, I'm sure everyone's heard stories about when there's turbulence and someone was unbuckled in and they went into the bulkhead and hit their head and something
Mhm.
happened. That can happen with a baby or with an infant or with a toddler, but they're a lot lighter. They're going to go a lot farther.
Mhm.
So having them buckled in means that in the case of turbulence, they're seated properly, they're secured, they're in their 5-point harness, and they're not going to go anywhere. In a seatbelt on a seat on a plane, if they're just sitting in it, the 40-pound weight limit's there because they can slide out of it. And so most, if not all, car seats are checked. They're put through the same testing that they would be put through for in a vehicle. They do plane simulations where they put them in like a seat row, and then they turn it and they want to see how the seat moves in the plane. So they simulate that to check for those circumstances where there might be turbulence. The plane might, heaven forbid, lose power and go down and restart, or something happens or in a crash. So they can simulate those situations. And all car seats, at least in the US, as far as I know, have an FAA regulation. So they're FAA approved along with being approved for vehicles.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
they're
I guess like my question would be because I'm thinking of my daughter's car seat because we're flying somewhere this winter. And since she'll be over 2, we had to purchase her a
Mhm.
seat. Um, her car seat is so big and bulky. Like I
Yeah.
just feel like the plane seats are so small. Like
They
what
will
does it
they
even
will
fit?
f it'll fit. All car seats have to fit on a plane.
Okay.
It's just sometimes parents will go, "It is too bulky, too big, too hard to take around." And so I recommend picking up an inexpensive car seat that's lightweight that you can carry. Costco Sonera makes a great one. That's an option. It's really lightweight. A lot of people use that one for traveling.
What's it called?
The Costco, I think it's Cosco, Sonera, Senera. That's an option. Graco makes some lighter seats, and that are price point like budget friendly. So if you know that you're going to be doing a lot of traveling, it's worth it investing in a lighter car seat that you can take to and from the airport and know that you're going to use it for travel. I always recommend, if you're going to do that and you need to put it in a vehicle wherever you're going, to practice at home a few times to make sure you're comfortable installing it. So that if you got a rental car, if you got another vehicle, you would know how it needs to go and how it should be buckled in and what it should look like. If you're not traveling a ton and it's a one-off trip, it's it's a pain, but take the car seat that you have, and you know how to put it in, you know how to use it, you know your child's going to be comfortable in it. So that's an option too.
Mhm. Yeah, have to look into that. Sonera. Um, and well, because for our infant car seat, we have the Duna,
Mhm.
and that one's so like big and bulky too. It's so heavy. I'm like getting to the
It is
point where
heavy.
I'm like, because we ended up getting an SUV when we had 2 kids instead of the sedan, and it's like so heavy to like put up in the SUV. I'm like, I feel like
Yeah.
I'm damaging my back.
The Dunas are a really great option, but they have a very, in my opinion, a very short shelf life because they are really heavy and they're kind of awkward and bulky to take. Did
Mm.
you buy a seat for your infant, or are you going to hold them on the plane?
We're gonna hold them.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's like not recommended, but I'm
Yeah.
too cheap to buy another plane ticket, just being
And that's
honest.
and that's what's so difficult about flying with littles is they give you this option to hold them, but it's not the ideal. My recommendation would be in that situation, make sure you have your ergo with you, carry them through the airport, either put your toddler in a stroller or have them walk or be worn by your partner, and then put the car seat in the stroller and take it, gate check your stroller, install the car seat in the plane, hold baby. For baby wearing, you can't wear them during takeoff and landing, but at least you can put them on you during the flight. And then that gives them a little bit of security. Like they're not going to be
Yeah.
buckled in, but they're strapped on you. So they're less likely to go out anywhere. But it's a hard call. The airlines make it really difficult to travel with kids, but they have these expectations that, you know, you don't have to put your baby in a seat. And sometimes flight attendants will fight you on whether or not you're allowed to buckle your seat in on the plane. And the FAA provides regulations you can print. And I always recommend when people are traveling, print a copy of those regulations, take a picture of your sticker on your car seat that says this is FAA certified and I am allowed to use it on a plane, and go in with that documentation and say, this is my right. I have bought a seat. I am securing my child safely. I know the regulations. I know that they are allowed to sit here and I want my kiddo safe when I land, and push for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. Yeah, especially, I mean, since we have to buy a ticket for Jovi anyways. I did fly a few times with her when she was an infant, and I always nursed her during takeoff and landing because of like the ear
Right.
popping and stuff
Mhm.
too. And I'm like, she's just gonna like freak out if I'm like, because even now we, I mean, this is totally unsafe, so maybe I shouldn't even share it. No, we went on a road trip and I did the whole like dangle feeding over the seat like while we were driving because
If it's,
like
I mean,
the
I've been there. I've done it.
well, it
I
was an
wouldn't
11
recommend it.
hour
I'm not encouraging it. It's a
right,
do as
right.
I say, not as I do. But like sometimes you're just so desperate that you got to do it.
I know, I know. Well, it was an 11-hour car drive
That's
road
rough.
trip. And it was more for my toddler than my infant. Like I'm nursing both of them. And it's the it was more for like her. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's like, I just am gonna nurse her for a little bit. So if she's like in a car seat, like when we're driving around running errands, whatever, she's like totally fine. But she
Yeah.
like knows if we're in the car for like a few hours. And then if she like sees me, she's like, okay, we should probably nurse or something so that I can go to sleep or like whatever. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
And you can
Um,
do that during the flight and pop her out and have her on you. It's just for takeoff and landing, she's going to need to be in her seat. So I always recommend, like, if they like fruit snacks or like sugar-free or low sugar or natural lollipops are a good option, just something they can suck on. If she is willing to, or if she does drink out of a bottle or a cup, something with a straw to get that swallow reflex, since you probably won't be able to nurse her and you'll be holding your infant. And that's the one
right.
you're really going to want to nurse during the flight
Hmm.
on the way up and down, because they can't regulate at all. They don't know to swallow without nursing. They don't know what's happening. And
Hmm.
you can preemptively prompt your toddler to say, we're going to be traveling. This is how your ears might feel. Do you remember, if I don't know if you've ever driven like up a mountain road or gone up altitude, be like, this is what it's going to feel like. Do you remember this? It's probably not going to feel good. So here's what we have that we can do to kind of maybe make it feel a little better. And if it's a screaming kiddo, it's unfortunately a screaming kiddo. I've been there when I've traveled, and my little one does not do well with flying when we're ascending and descending. Her ears are just, they don't pop, and so she
Mm,
will cry and scream and be so upset. And passengers get it. They look
yeah.
around and they have sympathy, and it's a 15-minute thing, and every parent's been there. So I
Hmm.
like to think that, like, at least no one's too frustrated and aggravated if that happens. Like, everyone's pretty understanding.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that was, I guess, my one last question, the traveling thing. So I, because let's say you have a kid over 40 pounds, you have like a
Mhm.
4 or 5 year old,
Yeah.
um, who still needs a car seat and you're traveling somewhere. So you're not going to bring yours. You're going on vacation, but you're going to rental car. Like, how does that work?
So in that case, I think it just depends on the age and maturity of your child. There are really simple boosters that are available, like the MyFold. I personally keep one in my car for when I have to pick up friends' kiddos, because I am the parent who is like, everyone is in a car seat unless you are actually able to sit in a seat on your own. So I keep one in the back of my car. It's a very small, foldable booster seat that you can pop out. It's great for short rides. At 4 or 5, they can ride in it. It's not my first choice, but they're very inexpensive. So if push came to shove and you were taking an Uber somewhere and it's a 5 or 10 minute drive, that's doable, especially if another adult is in the back seat with them to make sure that they're sitting properly. If it were longer travel or you were doing more traveling, there's a brand called Ride Safer, and they make a vest in multiple sizes. And that's my go-to for traveling with, 3 and up, and you need a car seat. It is kind of a hybrid between a booster and a 5-point harness. And it's really neat. I actually don't have mine on me. It's in my husband's truck because it's what my daughter, who's turning 8 next month, still uses in the car. Because I'm like, you're not safe enough to be on your own. Like, you need something. But it's this really neat vest that velcros and buckles, and it brings the seatbelt across their body, but it simulates a 5-point harness. So you can use the seatbelt. They're sitting flat, and what it does is it brings the seatbelt down to their hips and across their chest. So there's 2 little buckles that go on, and it pulls across their body, and you can buckle it in. And that has to be, they're a little more expensive, but that's probably my favorite option for when your child's over the weight limit and doesn't need a car seat on the plane, but you're still stopping to travel, because it's really easy to pop in and out of vehicles. They can walk around with it on during that time. You can pack it in your diaper bag or backpack. They fold up fairly small, or you can leave it attached in the car. They have a tether option so that it's tethered to the vehicle, so you still get that top tether stop. That helps with their head and neck in an accident, and it's sizable. So I think now they have like a small, medium, and large size. They're good for any vehicle that has a lap and shoulder belt. You can use them on buses if you have a lap and shoulder belt situation where they still need to be secured, and it's easy to put in transport.
What a cool invention.
Yeah.
What's it called again?
The Ride Safer vest.
Right.
They also have a booster that you can order separately. And I believe that they're still making what's called a mommy shield. And it's something you can wear when you're pregnant, and you put it on over the seatbelt, and it helps protect your bump from that impact. Because when you're riding in a vehicle and you have a baby bump, your seatbelt doesn't necessarily fit where it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pregnancy accommodations.
Yeah,
So
I remember being uncomfortable with that, and like having those thoughts go through my mind of like, okay, what if I did get in a wreck? Like, is this appropriate? Well, I just want to thank you so much, Holly, for coming on and for sharing all of your information, because like, I mean, when it comes to the passenger safety, unfortunately, I don't know much. And I'm like, I should, because I have kids, but that's how most of us are, right? We're like,
yeah.
I guess like I'm following the guidelines of the car seat that I have.
Yeah. But it's always read the car seat manual and
Yeah.
read your car manual, because your vehicle manual may have different directions, and it always refers back to, like, if you read any car seat manuals, they're like, check your vehicle manual, make sure that you're installing it in the correct place, make sure that you're using the correct latches, make sure that you're, using the correct hooks. Like, there's so many things that go into it. And people are like, well, I read how to put my car seat in, and it went in, and I'm looking at it going, yes, but it's not in the right spot. Or like for tethers, you can't always share those lower latches, or it may be you can put one rear facing in one way, but it has to be front facing in a different spot. Or there's so many things that go into it, and it can be really overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. I need to check my car manual.
I always recommend checking both when you put it in.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out, because I didn't know that either. I was telling my friend a while ago, I'm like, there's no just like one-stop shop for everything parenting that you need to know.
Yeah.
There's so much information. Yeah, they give you this baby and they're like, here you go. And you're like, what?
Yeah. Go off into the world, be free. And you're like, what am I doing?
Right, exactly. Because we were just, talking about different things. And for some reason, I've tried everything with my second, who just seems to have blowouts. Like I've tried different diapers, different things, like nothing's stopping this kid from pooping through her diaper. And I'm like, I need like a diaper expert or like somebody to come tell me, like, I've been diapering my oldest for 2 years. Like, what's going on here? Like,
She's a powerhouse.
she is. And I'm like, there's no like parental guide or even like what happens when like she had texted me a picture and her son was sitting down there the same age, they're 6 months, and he had a huge blowout. And it's like, okay, like, how do you like grab this thing while you're trying to wash them off? Like, can I just spray them? Like, like, what are the steps that I should be taking to make sure I'm not like getting poop on their face and like trying to like get it off their entire body? It's like, there's no like manual of like, in case this happens, see page, this page
Yeah.
for like instructions for every single thing out there. So we're learning as we go, but when it comes to safety, it is super, super important to have knowledge, make sure that your kids are buckled in correctly, making sure, because one thing I see all the time is that it's not at the armpit level and it's supposed
Oh,
to be
the
at the
chest
armpit
all the
level.
time. The chest clip, or they'll have the straps too high when they're rear facing. It should go down below their shoulder. And I always see like it'll be sitting like this instead of like this,
Mm,
or front facing, it's the opposite, because when you flip them around, the buckle positioning changes. So your straps go up and over, and it's really confusing. You're looking at stickers of warning labels and you're like, well, if this is this and then this, and it's a lot. You forget.
mm-hmm. Yep. So it's really important information to know. So if you guys are listening, make sure that you follow Holly because she shares all of shares some great resources on her Instagram. And where can people connect with you at?
I'm at Mama Goose OC on Instagram, and I have a website, mamagooseoc.com. If they ever want to email for questions, I'm always happy to chat and provide support via that too. I'm also on Facebook at Mama Goose OC. So that's
Awesome.
me.
And I will include all of that in the show notes. I just want to thank you so much for coming on and for sharing all of your expertise and information with us today.
Yeah, happy to chat. Thanks for having me.